Let me tell you guys a story. I told this before. I was in Frederick, whatever you pronounce it, Maryland. And this was during lockdown. It was during mask mandates and all that stuff. And I went to get sushi. And I was with my girlfriend. We walked into the sushi restaurant. We were standing probably about 5 or 10 feet from a two-person table. And we walked in, and I was like, 2. And then they looked at me and said, you need to wear a mask. And then I looked around at everyone, aside from the staff, no masks.
Yeah.
And I was like, excuse me, like nobody's wearing masks. And like, well, they're eating. And I was like, oh yes, I'd like to eat as well. And they said, no, but put a mask on. And I said, well, are you serious? Like, but they're not wearing masks right now. Like, I'll just sit down. Is that okay? And they're like, no, put the mask on.
Yeah.
And then I said, you want me to wear a mask for 10 seconds? Are you serious? And they all go, everyone turns and goes, yes. And I was like, I'm leaving. Yeah. Like, what is wrong with their brains?
Dude.
There was 50 people sitting around with no masks on. You know what I thought? You know, I was in Frederick recently. I'm walking around, I got a coffee. And I thought, I made a mistake that day. You know what I should have done? I should have been like, oh, I'm sorry. I should have taken the mask and just gone like this. And just pulled it and held it right in front of my face, floating about an inch away. And then just okay, I'll sit down. You want me to sit down? I'll sit down and go, okay. I should have just
grab a napkin or something at that point. Just cover your mouth with
put your hand over your face.
What the heck? I mean, the napkin in your it's going to do the same thing. Your hand in a napkin is going to do the same thing that a cloth mask would do.
I thought about that when I was there, and I said, you know, when you go to West Virginia, they did the statewide had mask mandates for stuff, but like nobody was really following it. It was kind of funny. And so I just avoided any place in West Virginia that actually had a sign asking for masks. I was like, this is stupid.
What did your restaurants do, if you don't mind me asking? And did you guys have to comply with the plexiglass that went up in price very significantly during this whole shenanigan nonsense theater that we had to go through?
I've got a warehouse full of plexiglass right now. I mean, it's like plexiglass was in such demand, I ended up having to meet some guy behind a 7-Eleven at 2:30 in the morning. Bought it out of the back of a Cadillac. I mean, it was like, no, I'm kidding, but plexiglass was so hard to get. It was virtually impossible. And we left it up to the consumer, and we had people leave because they were like, they're not wearing masks, but we just let people decide what they wanted to do. But now that we're talking about masks, let me throw a couple facts out there. 3 million masks are discarded worldwide every single minute. Masks are made of polypropylene. All of those masks, all of them end up in the ocean. Yes. Guess what polypropylene breaks down into? Microplastics. Yes. So in California, okay, I have to now, they are mandating masks again in Los Angeles. Yeah. So I have to wear a mask.
Recently?
Yeah.
Wow.
They
reinstated the mask.
So they're mandating masks indoors, all right? That mask is going to end up in the ocean. It's going to be microplastic, going to end up in our entire food system, and it's going to kill sea life. Now, alternatively, if I ask for a straw and a straw is given to me, both me and the person who gave it to me get a fine. Yeah. If it happens twice, it's criminalized and you can go to jail for it.
Wow.
So you can't get the straw because you got to save sea life, but you have to wear the mask to kill sea life.
California.
I have, maybe this is a hot take, but I think that COVID particularly is spreading and has been spreading through the food supply, not through the air, or maybe it has been spreading through the air as well.
It's Ian's
but through the
ice
food.
cream theory.
No, it's beyond that. Now, from the Daily
pizza.
Mail, as of December 3rd, broccoli and raspberries could give you COVID. Health experts warn after learning the virus can live on popular foods for as long as a week.
I think that's a little bit of a fear mongering.
COVID was detected on peppers, ham, bread crust, and cheese for several days.
Hold on. Just pull up the story. Ian's not wrong. Broccoli and raspberries could give you COVID.
This is
on top of ice cream.
One,
which is
it's
also
the Daily Mail. 2, the title is suggestive, saying it could, not that it would.
It's been found. It's detected COVID on peppers, ham, bread crust, and cheese. I mean, absolutely, the writing is on the wall. From Newsweek, COVID-19 has now been found in ice cream. This is from January of 21. I think that it lives on food, but they don't want to cause panic.
But the thing is that could be scientifically true, but we know that COVID is a respiratory, so you have to breathe it in. If it lives on the food, it's an active culture, but if you swallow it, then it's killed in your body. I think it lives on pineapple pizza.
I mean, you could smell the food.
Really? So you're saying no one should ever order a pineapple pizza?
Exactly.
If you smell food that has it on it, it could go into your lungs that way.
Well, if I could ask you, you just talked a little bit about the regulations in California. I couldn't imagine. I think it would be my worst nightmare in my life to open up a business in California. What was it like operating business there? What are some of the more insane regulations that you have to go through that the people don't know about?
Well, keep in mind too, and it's different in different parts of California because everybody's like, "Why are you still living there?" Well, number one, because somebody's got to be fighting in enemy territory, and number two, there are certain areas where there's reason and there's logic and rationale. Orange County being one of them. Los Angeles is incredibly difficult when it comes to opening a business. But I'll tell this one story, right? So as I had mentioned, I started as a food truck in 2011 and then grew the enterprise. I had no money to start the first brick and mortar. I bought this old bagel shop. It was a hole in the wall, but it was a turnkey situation. The landlord was going to take a chance on me. And I think we ended up raising like $70,000 to open this. And I had no money after that, not even a penny. Right when we're about to open, we do the kind of final walkthrough with health. And they go, "Where's your grease interceptor, the underground one," right? And I said, "Oh, well, we're grandfathered in because I bought the lease. It's an above ground one." They said, "Yeah, but that kind of grandfather piece is going to go away in a couple years. So just put the underground one." And I'm like, "Look, I can't. That's $25,000. They're like, "Yeah, we don't care. You got to do it." So I'm about to open. So I have to take out a high interest loan that I paid off like 14 years later at 39% interest compounded every minute.
Wow.
But the point is, $25,000 the day before my business is supposed to open, when there wasn't even a specific regulation. It was more just, well, it's going to happen, even though we were told everything was going to be okay. That story kind of represents California.
Were they
business.
expecting a bribe? Because it seems like a lot of mafioso like people run a lot of these regulations, and they kind of expect some money underneath the table just to not implement whatever made up nonsense they want to implement.
That's more Jersey style. Jersey is and I'm from Jersey, so I know that. In California, it's just ineptitude. In California, it's you're feeding the bureaucracy, and the bureaucracy feeds the bureaucracy. It's kind of like a beast that eats itself.
Do you just love it there? Is that why you're still there?
It is a beautiful place. My wife was born and raised there, and my kids love it. So I.
Where are you? You're in not Long Beach, near Long Beach?
Huntington Beach.
It's such an amazing area.
I mean, it's gorgeous. It is.
Manhattan Beach, Long Beach, Venice, up and down the boardwalk. You can ride your bike. I highly recommend everybody get a chance to visit at some point in their life. It's so amazing. The beach.
But why do you hate pineapple pizza?
It's too wet. So it drizzles on the pizza. I would do like a pineapple salsa with jalapenos to finish the pizza, but roasted and sweet and sticky pineapple releases way too much moisture, and then it kills the dough if it sits there too long.
What if the pineapple's diced up super fine?
Well, in the form of like a salsa that hasn't been cooked, because then it won't release all that moisture.
What about dehydrated pineapple? Too much work?
No, I like that. This could be the compromise that people have been asking for. It's funny. I said I would never eat pineapple pizza, and I forget what it was about. And then Newsmax reached out to me and said, "Well, you said you wouldn't if X happened, so we want to do a live shot of you eating pineapple pizza on TV." So we actually did it. That was the second time and last time I'll eat pineapple pizza.
Do you use seed oils?
I try not to, although seed oils are hidden in a lot of different places.
They're everywhere.
That's why I go back to the omega-6s. So seed oils are bad because you have this imbalance of omega-6 fatty acids that leads to inflammation and hypertension and a lot of other issues. So if you actually eat more seafood, you can theoretically balance out that inflammation and have a couple seed oils. Sorry.
What about all the gluten stuff? Right? A lot of people don't want to eat it. I've actually... so I cut out sugars about a year. It's been like a year now. It's crazy. I can't believe how long it's been. Yeah. And I lost a lot of weight, but I cut out rice too. And I've been adding. So I went like way down to like no carbs. Then I sort of tried things. Like I remember like Michaela Peterson and Jordan Peterson were talking about eating nothing but meat, and they said, well, at the very least, it's an elimination diet. You get rid of everything and then slowly try things and see which one bothers you. And ultimately, what I found is, it's not so much eating sugar. Too much obviously messes me up. But on the days that I'll eat bread, the next day I feel foggy and groggy.
Yeah, I mean, it all affects 90% of your neurotransmitters are in your intestines, right? So obviously what we eat is related to our brains. That's why people with irritable bowel syndrome take antidepressants, because they're one and the same.
Man.
Yeah, and this is why a lot of the gut problems are correlated with a lot of people taking SSRIs and antidepressants as well. And there's been something happening within our food industry that is absolutely incredibly worrisome, especially when it comes to chronic diseases that are becoming more and more common. Obesity rates have gone up 30% in the last 20 years. Meanwhile, our calorie intake didn't really change that much. So people have to start asking themselves, what in the the world's really going on here. What do you make of all this? What do you think, from being inside the industry, is responsible for a lot of this?
Yeah, it is. It's what the food is made up of. It's obviously the food deserts too. You look in a lot of these inner cities, they have no access to whole foods, real foods, so they're eating empty calories. So even if you look at it on a kind of a calorie by calorie basis, there's superfoods and there's effective calories, and then there's just kind of empty calories that then ultimately affect the mind, which is probably what you were feeling the next day, and that's a common feeling. I think that people come down on this notion, this gluten-free movement, as being just this kind of California hippie left-wing thing. I think there is a genuine issue in our food system that's leading people to have more sensitivity to gluten. Is what it is. I mean, I could be conspiratorial and I could pin it to certain vaccines, or I could just say it's the preponderance of hidden chemicals in our food, specifically glyphosate. I'm sure you guys have talked about that.
Oh, yeah, all the time.
They use it as a desiccant on wheat. If your wheat's not organic, what they'll do is they'll spray it on there throughout the course of the wheat's life to prevent, I think it's a fungicide, or is it a herbicide? It's an herbicide.
It's an herbicide, Roundup.
Yeah, to make sure that you don't get weeds.
It's Bill Gates' favorite pesticide.
But then they go in right before they're about to harvest it, and to dry out the wheat, they hit it with Roundup again as a desiccant. And then they harvest it really quick. That's disgusting.
And now Bill Gates is making super glyphosate, as of course the glyphosate and the bacteria resistance is starting to build up against it and not being as effective. So now they're doing a stronger version of glyphosate. And this is the latest corn video that Bill Gates kind of rolled out there recently, with him sucking down on the corn cob, and with children, dancing and singing behind.
You know what they originally used glyphosate for? It started in the Reagan administration, and they actually were using it. They would spray Colombian cocaine farms with the glyphosate to kill it. Yeah. And then it would leach into the water system, would leach into the surrounding communities, which were like smaller communities or indigenous communities. And then they saw 10, 15 years later, a lot of those people started developing different cancers and all these health ailments. Wow. But it was used by the U.S. government to stop. It was part of the drug war.
Yeah.
Now it's in all of our food.
Yeah.
I'd rather have the cocaine in our food.
Yeah.
Might as well.
Come on, Coke. Who was it? Was it Elon Musk who tweeted that?
Yes, he did.
Yeah.
Bring back Coke to
buy Coke to put the cocaine back in it.
There's another chemical. I don't want to talk right now.
There's a whole bunch of garbage that they put in our food, and everybody eats it. That's another thing too. We have these glass bottles. We have a bunch of those plastic water bottles I see you're drinking over there, but we also have we started buying a bunch of glass bottles to get away from the plastic ones because of the phthalates, the PCBs, with the PFAs or whatever. There's just like it's crazy. I kind of feel like we look back on history and we're like, did you know they used to drink mercury to deal with syphilis or whatever? In 50 to 100 years, they're going to be like, could you imagine they were actually using plastic for their food? How messed up is that?
It's such a good point. You are entirely correct. We will. So much of what we're doing right now, we're going to look back on and be like, isn't that crazy? Which is funny because during COVID, everything was just agreed upon as pure fact. You can't question it.
Trust the science.
Okay, so let's talk.
I just want to bring up one more point, especially when it comes to microplastics that are now being found in people's lungs and blood. This is something that, of course, is also a huge disruptor of your hormone system, and this is why a lot of people think that sperm levels and testosterone levels have gone down so much dramatically within the last few years. There's no way of stopping it. China just keeps getting all the plastic, dumping it into the ocean. The United States just essentially started doing the same thing. The masks, again, lots of plastic just being thrown out there, people breathing it in, sucking all the plastic down there. Is there a way of even avoiding this plastic? I mean, we try to do, glass bottles, but at the same time, everything else is in plastic. All the food is wrapped in plastic. All the cookware is laced with plastic. All the things are non-stick plastic. Is there a way of avoiding any of this craziness? Because I'm just looking at everything that's happening. I'm like, there's no way of stopping it,
dude. I mean, I use bamboo to cook my food, etc. And you can use like a skillet. There's things you can do that are like.
Well, yeah, I have a cast iron skillet as well, exactly. But then the food comes packaged in plastic.
Right, that's true. No, I totally understand. Totally understand.
Am I being too paranoid here, or do you what are you seeing from your observations?
I don't know in terms of where it's coming from in that particular scenario, right? So if we have all these microplastics that are in our lungs, we're breathing that in. So does that come from food? Does it come from cooking? Does it come from heat? I have no idea. Yeah. I mean, clearly it's an issue, but it's one of those issues that's used as a hammer in certain circumstances and ignored in other circumstances.
I get this.
Yeah, I'll put it this way, Luke. We used to have to go to farms. I believe it was 100 years ago, the average family owned a cow or something like that. Like cows were very common. A family would have the family cow. When you wanted meat, there wasn't plastic, but you had to go to a farm, you had to go to a butcher. You can still do those things. It's just that there's a convenient location with plastic wrapped food for you. And so we just choose to go there. But look, man, we're lucky. Out here, maybe even like 5 miles away, there's a farm stand. It's a little building. And when you go in there and get the meat, it's in like wax paper. It's in like, deli wrapped wax paper. And then they hand it to you. It's frozen and you bring it home and you peel the sticker. It's paper. Open it up. Farm fresh meat right there on the spot. No plastics, grass fed, good stuff.
A lot of the papers have plastic in them. A lot of the receipts have plastic in them. Yeah. My dream now is to have a cow. Sorry, Ian, you had something else you wanted to bring up.
I'm wearing plastic glasses on my face. It's pretty gross, probably leaching into my head as I'm speaking. I've been thinking that a little esoterically, like if the earth is an organism and they say like if it doesn't like the life on it, it'll kill it all with like a flood. Like it'll flood itself and wipe out all the life that's been poisoning its surface, or it'll bring an asteroid, a meteoroid or something. I think also what the earth would do, this is obviously kind of somewhat silly to think of the earth as a living organism, but let's just say it is, that it would wipe out humanity by making it sterile. And we're kind of doing that to ourselves with plastics and hormones and chemicals, herbicides in our water supply. It's decreasing the fertility rates. And so it's another way to wipe out a species is through infertility. I'd never thought of that before. We don't need a flood or an asteroid this time. We just got to be really careful about what we consume. But I mean, good question, Luke. I think maybe the future is graphene, getting away from these weird oil-based carbons and trying to make something a little more stable, like diamond packaging.
What if graphene is worse than all the other plastics and leaches even more, and then goes into our bloodstream?
You got to find ways for it not to leach. That's key. Like, I don't know if you had like malleable diamond plastic, like if it was like diamond, pure carbon, and it was like crumpleable diamond, if that would not leach. I mean, I think you could find ways to not leach.
Could we be proactive though and actually make the packaging out of testosterone?
Oh, something edible.
Or like vitamin C.
We're thinking on the defense here. We got to be.
There's a store not far away from here that they print their receipts on like vitamin C receipts, and there's no plastics.
Oh, wow.
So
Vitamin C.
Yeah, it's vitamin C. Mom's supermarket.
They do that?
Yeah. The receipts are not made out of plastic. They're like, hey, we have vitamin C receipts here.
You can eat it.
I asked them if I could. They're like, no, but the plastic, especially from the receipts, does leach. Does have.
They're like, yes,
chemicals
eat
on
your
there.
purchase record, and we'll see if we let you out of the store.
But every time I'm there, I'm like, hey, this is pretty cool that you guys are doing this, and it's pretty awesome.
Aren't the receipts like particularly bad, or they have cancer-causing chemicals in them? Is that the reason why?
Well, they're made out of plastic that leaches.
Right. But
Dude, I got to see some documents on this vitamin C receipt because this is sounding cool.
I've never heard of that.
You got to show up to Mom's supermarket in there.
I'm reading about them right now.
Isn't it like a huge chain, Mom's?
I think so.
They're pretty great, though.
Yeah.
I like going there. I got farm fresh cream for my coffee. Real grass-fed stuff. Expires real quick like it's supposed to.
So just to ask you, because you were in the food industry, did you notice the level of food kind of going down throughout the last few years? Like, do you see the quality being an issue? Or, what's the kind of inside baseball when it comes to procuring a lot of food for your restaurants?
Yeah, well, the trajectory's already been on a downward spiral, just in general, in terms of quality of food, and it follows the quality of everything, right? But since the pandemic, it's gotten really bad because, number one, the supply chain issues, number two, our relationship with China, and I think people don't realize how much we rely on other countries for our food. So our food system is not just incredibly vulnerable and it's not domestic, but it's also, it's questionable when you're getting food from another place that you don't know how they're harvesting, raising, rearing, the husbandry behind their food. So the answer is, of course, take the extra time. That's a great point that Tim makes, is that if you take the extra time, you actually can go find that butcher, that fishmonger, whoever it is, to actually try and understand where your food is coming from. I know it sounds like a cliche. From a wholesale perspective, it's much easier for me as a restaurateur because I can kind of cut out a couple kinks in that chain of custody. But consumers can do that too. And this is the point I've been making since inflation has gotten so bad. It's incumbent upon consumers to create a relationship with a restaurateur not just, this isn't kind of self-fulfilling here, because then you can piggyback on their orders and their products. I love it when customers come to me and say, hey, can you throw 5 extra pounds on the order of broccoli that you're getting? And then I buy more, which gives me better economies of scale. My customer gets raw products at a much lower value, which puts more money in their pockets that they hypothetically could spend at my restaurant or another community restaurant. I mean, that's the notion of comparative advantage. And, what that's doing is actually cutting out the Walmarts of the world. It's cutting out a lot of these other businesses.
I think someone should develop an app to facilitate customers piggybacking off of restaurateurs' purchases.
I completely agree.
Well, there's also a lot of monopolies that I think cause a lot of problems in the industry. I think it's estimated that there's only 10 companies that produce 90% of the food in the United States. And when you have so many few big multinational industries controlling a lot of this, many times profit is incentivized over, of course, offering a product that's actually good or healthy or actually going to be helping people in the long term, because a lot of the times it's not incentivized to do so. And I think also behind the scenes, there's a bigger agenda to try to poison people with the release of glyphosate, with the release of seed oils, making them a lot cheaper with government subsidies, knowing that the end result will be more unhealthy people, which will be dependent on government, and therefore government is doing this, according to my own personal opinion.
Isn't like the overwhelming majority of food from Cisco, from all these restaurants?
Yeah, Cisco, U.S. Foods, they're two of the biggest players out there. Actually, their merger was broken down by an antitrust lawsuit, which is surprising. But then it would have been just one behemoth running all the food.
But how does that work? What does Cisco do? Are they a distributor, or they're
a wholesaler and a distributor? So what they're going to do is they're going to aggregate all the products, and then they're going to distribute it to all the restaurants, venues, you name it. So it's just massive purchasing power.
Wow.
Yeah, I mean, it is huge, and it's for me, when it comes to trying to grow a business and scale good, I consider what we were doing from a sustainability perspective a good business, and using the little guys, because we mandated that as part of our franchise system. It was virtually economically impossible to do so and to avoid the Ciscos and the U.S. Foods of the world. And ultimately, my franchisees ended up using those guys, and I couldn't stop them from using it because you can't force them to lose money.
Right.
And then the big guys win. They always do.
What's this new lawsuit? You said if your franchisee does something illegal, like I didn't get the full story, but what is it?
It's called the joint employer. It's called the joint employer rule, and it was actually set forth during the Obama administration. It was overturned during the Trump administration, and then it was put back in place under the new Biden administration. And what it basically conjectures is that if you are a franchisor, let's say I sell a franchise to you, you're all the way out here, you're running the franchise, and you're mistreating your employees. I've just licensed you my brand. I don't run your business. You run your business. I have absolutely nothing to do with it. Let's say you short pay one of your employee sues you. They sue me too. I'm in the lawsuit, even though I have nothing to do with it. It pierces that corporate veil between the franchisee and the franchisor, giving responsibility to the bigger guy.
That doesn't sound like a functional system.
Yeah, and originally it was set forth by McDonald's. It was a McDonald's lawsuit because they said that McDonald's was trying to stop the unions from working with local franchisees, and then there was a lot of issues and lawsuits. They went after whoever had the biggest bank account.
Okay, so a certain level of corporations. Well, anyway, that's an interesting conversation. How did you guys navigate, because you said 2011 is when you opened your first food cart, and so it's 11 years later, you've got 60 restaurants?
So it was 10 years later, we had 40, couple different concepts.
How did you create such explosive growth? Was it my hopefully what you're going to say is good ingredients, but tell me about, what did you prioritize to get there?
Well, actually, it was a pretty simple formula. So what we said is the whole entire mission was to get people to eat more seafood, but more of the right types of seafood. So we were sourcing 100% sustainably caught, raised, farmed seafood, and then all of our ingredients. We were the first 4-star green certified restaurant. We were actually kind of at the forefront of green. So I'm like that kind of weird hippie space. But we sent that, we stuck with our message. We were true to it. We weren't greenwashing. 90% of the businesses now that use all that language, they're not true to it. We're true to it. And sustainability tastes better. Right? And that's what people need to realize, is that higher quality when it comes to food and sustainability, it does actually taste better. And then that was it. I mean, it's a real simple formula. Just serve good food. I'll
say one thing. Papa John's better ingredients. The company did Papa John dirty, but actually look at their ingredients, and it's true. And I love this. I looked at the ingredients for Pizza Hut. Their crust has Splenda in it.
Yeah.
Yeah. Why? And then you look at Domino's, and Domino's isn't as bad, but they've got you'll see like words you can't pronounce. But then you look at like Papa John's and it's like whole wheat, water, yeast. The sauce, tomatoes, sugar, the cheese, part skim milk, whatever. It's like, wow, really is like very, very basic stuff. We got these protein bars, the Epic protein bars. It's just meat.
Yeah,
you got them because the ingredients, it's like beef, garlic, paprika. And then the only thing in it that's weird is like the lactic acid thing. But I'm like, I know what that is, so it doesn't freak me out. And it's like, it's pretty good stuff, man. Thanks for watching this clip from the Timcast IRL podcast. Hang out with us live Monday through Friday at 8 p.m. and become a member over at timcast.com for uncensored, members-only shows exclusive. Thanks for hanging out, and we'll see you all next time.